it's Bear here again. Perhaps you already know that if you saw the previous installments. I've already covered how to make your own Spiral Betty pictures to colour in, or how to colour in a spiral from a spiral colouring book, and how to colour in lines and dots pictures as well. I use gel pens, so in those previous tutorials I also tried to include some tips about how to get the most from your gel pens. I thought I'd do a flip through of the book that I have, just as an example of what to look for if you are trying to decide whether to take this up as a hobby or if you're looking to get another lines, dots and spirals colouring book. Also at the end, I think I will talk about whether you could actually sort of make your own book of these, or whether you could just make your own pages instead of buying one of these books, because I think there is a way to do that partly. So I bought my lines, dots and spirals colouring book spontaneously, and I just went with the Harry Styles one because at the time I was making a couple of video essays about him, and at the same time I was making a couple of podcast episodes about him for another channel, and those recordings actually ended up on the Bear Meets Life YouTube channel as well, because I did some editing to sort of make them relevant for both. So it was actually kind of an accident that I ended up with the Harry Styles colouring book, and I just thought it was a funny thing when I bought it. I was just bemused that you could buy, that this was even an invention, that you could buy a colouring book full of Harry Styles' face. I thought the idea of lines, dots and spirals was pretty cool. You can get some pretty cool illusions from colouring them in. But also, I've said before, discovering lines, dots and spirals colouring books were also the first thing that sort of made it possible for me to do colouring as a mindfulness activity. Maybe like me, you've always been crafty. I was interested in adult colouring before that, but when I'd looked at books before, I would just get really overwhelmed. So I'm actually autistic. You might not know that if you haven't seen anything on the channel or listened to a podcast episode of mine before where I've mentioned that. And one of the reasons I wanted to have a go at colouring was actually to relax, because like a lot of autistic people, I'm prone to sensory overload. And when I'd looked at colouring books in the past, they just gave me sensory overload, because you're meant to create these like very vibrant multicolored pictures, and they would actually just really stress me out, because I would get like decision paralysis, or what's it called, decision analysis paralysis, where you can't decide like what colour to use next. And so lines, dots and spirals colouring books are great for that, because if you want to, you can colour most of the pictures in only one colour or two colours at most. And in fact, quite often they look better if you do stick to one colour. I have seen some other people on YouTube trying to experiment with sort of like rainbow effects, and usually you kind of lose what the image is meant to be, because the thing that kind of brings the illusion out is if it's all done in one colour, maybe two colours if you're going to colour in the background as well. Or if you accidentally colour a spiral picture with an X-ray effect, then you could save that by filling in the gaps with the second colour. But I won't go into that in detail right now, because after this I'm going to record something on some of the common mistakes when you're using these colouring books, and things that I've learned about how to look after my gel pens and how I approach the pictures now that I've coloured in. How many have I done? I think I've done nearly 20 out of a book that's got about 50 to 60 pages. So this particular book was less than £10, less than $10. So if I was going to spend that much again, I would expect a book that has around 50 pages in it, therefore. And when I first got it, I was actually surprised that it had that many pictures in. They're all sort of the same format, so all of the lines pictures are horizontal lines, so you can get colouring books where they've actually turned the lines on a diagonal. All of the dots pictures are quite similar in terms of like the formation of the dots, and then all of the spirals are quite a similar type of spiral picture as well, and so they have usually a spiral within a spiral with two outside ends that you can colour from. Whereas another thing that you'll find sometimes with spiral pictures in other colouring books is that you'll sometimes have a spiral picture where you're actually meant to colour it from the middle and work your way outwards. But with these ones, you're meant to go from the outside in, unless you're trying to create an X-ray effect. Or if you're making a spiral on the spiralbetty.com website, as I covered in a previous installment, so I won't go into all of the detail again, but that tends to create a spiral with just one end to it. But that's also because quite often crafters are using those to make a spiral Betty, in the sense of an artwork that you know put onto wood, or you put it onto the wall and things like that. Suppose at the end, or if you were finished with a picture and you wanted to then frame it or give it to someone else, you could take the book apart or try and cut the page out. But it's mostly to get enjoyment from the activity at the time when you're doing it, and then to have a book that you can flick through afterwards and see everything that you've achieved. Now, you can't always tell until you've actually filled in a picture what the finished picture is going to be. So in terms of judging the quality of the images that they've chosen to make the book, that can be a little bit tricky. The listings on Amazon, they don't have very much indication of what's inside the book. So on the cover, it will usually give you like a few sample images, but very rarely do I see a listing that actually includes any examples of what's inside the book otherwise. So it's not really until you get it that you can tell what you're going to be colouring in. For the book that I picked up, they've mainly used pictures of Harry Styles from 2010 to about 2017, I would say. So I can definitely recognise some images in there which are promotional images from like his first album artwork, or pictures that came from things like the Dunkirk premiere. And then there's also plenty of pictures in there which are from his One Direction days, which are very recognisable because he had, just like a big old... basically had a mop on his head, or like a big thing of broccoli. I'm not making fun of Harry. I mean, who wouldn't want to have hair that bouffant? Wait, is bouffant hair anyway? Never mind. And then they've also included some images from some like well-known magazine photo shoots of his, so I can recognise some images in there that I haven't actually even coloured in yet, but they clearly are pictures taken from things like his photo shoots for the Face magazine and stuff like that. So if you received a book and you can't quite tell in advance what all of the photos are until you've coloured it in, I don't think that's anything to worry about. I think the spirals are the hardest ones to see. Well, actually with a spiral picture, it's almost impossible usually to see until you've coloured it in what the finished picture is going to be. And that's also why I think the spirals are sometimes the ones that sort of turn out the least successful with this particular colouring book, for instance, because it is a Harry Styles dots, lines and spirals colouring book. I do kind of expect the finished picture to be recognisable as Harry Styles, and all of the lines and dots pictures I've done so far, it's clear that it's him. And you can also, even if I don't know exactly when the original picture was taken, I've been able to like show the colour picture to Harry Styles fans and have them say, oh yeah, I recognise that picture, that's from such and such an event. Whereas with some of the spirals pictures, I mean, one of them just, I don't think it even qualified as a face, and I do some of them quite quickly, so maybe I'm not 100% in the lines at all times. Perhaps I sometimes go a tiny bit over the line, but it really shouldn't be, but not to the extent that it would like ruin what the finished image is meant to be. And yet a couple of the spirals just really don't look specifically like Harry Styles at the end of it. Having used spiralbetty.com to try and create my own spiral outline, so I did that for a picture of Dylan O'Brien because people were searching on the YouTube channel for Teen Wolf and Maze Runner, and when you put those two things together you get Dylan O'Brien, since he is both in Teen Wolf and Maze Runner. I used spiralbetty.com to try and make a spiral picture of him to colour in there for. That's when I realised that you can create a very detailed spiral picture if you use really high contrast and select as many rings as possible, and also if you use a really good quality image as your starting point. So in terms of a time commitment, it has been quite time consuming. The very first picture I did took so long to finish that I did question whether it was something that I did want to take up as a hobby, but that was because I was using not very good colouring pencils instead of gel pens, and as soon as I switched to gel pens I was like, no, this is the right decision, this is something that I can definitely do when I just want to switch off, and it became a lot more satisfying to colour the pictures in. And I also just enjoyed like experimenting with different gel pens because I bought a really good gel pen set straight away that had, I think it's got 100 pens in it, and they're all different styles. Exploring all of that was sort of part of the fun for me. But if I know that it's kind of late, I would probably go for a spiral picture because I could colour that in maybe 40 minutes depending on how dense the spiral is. And then if I go for like a lines or a dots picture, I think the dots pictures take the longest. So I've been making a lot of time lapses lately. The other thing is that I'm also interested in Pomodoros. So I did some of the videos as like Pomodoro sessions where I'd been colouring a picture and it came out at exactly like 25 minutes of footage, or when I stitched it together, it was the equivalent of doing a Pomodoro, taking a break, doing another session and taking a break. Or there were some colouring sessions I did that were like 90 minutes, 2 hours long, which is how long you would spend if you were doing an ultradian Pomodoro. Because I'm autistic and I have hyperfocus, I'll usually go into like a deep state of concentration and I will want to work on that thing for a few hours. Obviously, colouring pictures is a little bit different because if you're going to colour for like 2 hours or more every time, sometimes you don't need that much time to finish a picture. But I probably lean more towards like an ultradian Pomodoro session if I'm going to do some deep work. If you've got plenty of time and you really do want to zone out, I would choose a lines or a dots picture. The other books that I was considering buying, so I did look at, there are a lot of lines, dots and spirals colouring books of Supernatural. And even since I bought this one, I've noticed you could probably get a lines, dots and spirals colouring book on almost anything that you want, whatever's of most interest to you. If you have a favourite band, favourite TV show, or if you want one which is more like object focused, places around the world, flowers and wildlife, stuff like that, you should be able to find almost any colouring book that you want. And I think you'll find the majority of these are just people kind of throwing them up as print on demand solutions. So in terms of quality, there's only sort of one misprint in the book that I've got where there's like 2 blank pages and then one of the pages is the wrong way round, but that's not a problem. It just means that there's 2 pictures facing each other, but that's not a problem at all. It's not gonna go through the page or anything. And the book that I received is a proper bound book with a glossy cover, but again, I think they probably just did that in Amazon print on demand because I've designed my own notebooks before in Amazon. When I couldn't find books that I wanted, I just made my own cover designs and my own interiors and uploaded them to Amazon to sell. And you can choose when you do that whether to have a glossy or a matte cover instead of buying a book. I think if you're just doing a one-off picture, then spiralbetty.com is a really good option, and you could print that and colour that to create lines and dots pictures. I still haven't researched that to find out what those websites are like. Let me know if you want me to investigate that and report back on how easy that is. So then if I wanted to make my own spirals colouring book, it would just be a case of uploading those to spiralbetty.com, making sure you select the colour in option so that you just get the blank outline, and then you would need to save all of those and then compile them, either turning them into a PDF to upload to something like Amazon print on demand. One thing to remember about that is that spiralbetty.com is really only free if it's for personal use. If you're doing something like that and you're using it for commercial purposes, then you should really pay to use that site. As it is, I think the main benefit of discovering lines, dots and spirals colouring books is that it's something to do so that you can forget about anything else that's going on, where you just don't have to think a lot in the first place. Whereas if you're going to make your own pictures, you've got to select a picture, make the picture, and then make those decisions about how you're actually going to colour it in. But if you're using this as part of like a bedtime routine to shut down because you do something really stressful during the day, or if you're using this because, like me, you get sensory overload and you need something that you can kind of retreat to, then I think having a book is just a good solution because it just removes any extra decision when you're already at a point where you just can't really fit in any more inputs. Next, I'm going to cover kind of all the mistakes that I made when I got my book and how I learned to make the most of my gel pen set.